Hey guys, what is up? Swim here. We're back with Evil Genius's Auto Chess Tournament breakdown for the Beat Invitational 2 that we participated in a couple of days ago. This is going to be part 2, which means we're going over the second match of the 3-match tournament. Out of the 3, this match is probably the most interesting. Some pretty unique and bizarre stuff happened in this match, and it led us down a pretty interesting path. So, like in part 1, we're basically going to be focusing on the most important decisions in auto chess, which are how to decide which build to go at any given moment. We're going to identify the factors that kind of help us make these decisions, as well as talk about slightly more advanced stuff like positioning and, scanning opponents' boards. This video is probably going to go a little bit more in depth than the first one, which was geared a little bit more basic. So, if that sounds your speed, let's get into it. All right, guys, this is it. Let's do this. Woo!
A few moments later.
Okay, double bounty hunter, 1 tinker. Let's see it. You guys ready for this? I'm feeling it. I'm feeling lucky. Woo! What? All right, so not too much to say about this one. We just flopped a set of clockworks. So yeah, we're going to be going goblins mechs in the early game. Honestly, you pretty much usually are pretty safe doing this anyway, but I mean, we got a level 2 clockworks, so now we're forced into it. The one thing on our minds is we're going to want to be a lot more aggressive in the early game, try to maintain a big win streak if possible. Ridiculous RNG aside, the first real decision of the game is going to come a couple of minutes later, staring at our bench of 2 Tinkers, 2 Batriders, seeing 2 Drows in the shop, and basically the decision is whether we want to hold on to these pairs, try to turn them into sets, so we can, put level 2s on the board, increase our board presence, or sell up to interest points to be able to make sure that our early game doesn't really fall off later. We're going to decide to keep these benched. It's really important auto chess early game. It's all about just collecting pairs of 2 of the same 1-cost units. Typically, 1-cost units are going to be a lot better than the 2-cost ones just because they're much more cost efficient, and just trying to sit on them until you get a set. So we want our board to improve, even though early game interest is very important. Okay, so next up, round 9, we're going to take an aggressive pump, of course, as is natural here. We need to protect our win streak, throw in the Morphling, complete the assassin set with the Queen of Pain and the Bounty Hunter. Pretty standard so far. The one interesting thing we're going to do here is move the Bounty Hunter up. Morphling gives us a bit more backline presence because he's not level 2. We can't really put him frontline yet, and therefore Bounty Hunter kind of wants to move up to start abusing a bit of damage. He's got the assassin buff, so he should be able to win pretty much any 1v1 while surviving and eating a bit of damage, hopefully. So this very same round, in round 9, we are unfortunate enough to queue into Renz's assassin build. He's got an elemental pocket and, most importantly, a level 2 Phantom Assassin and a level 2 Gondar. This is a bonkers build this early, Phantom Assassin being one of the strongest heroes in the game at the moment. When you get a level 2 PA this early, it's devastating. As you can see, we just lost the board, even with our pretty nuts board ourselves. So this is actually really, really important in terms of how this is going to affect our strategy moving forward. So the first thing is we just lost our streak, and there's 2 other boards that are really strong right now. Renz's as well as Michael's. Michael is still undefeated at the top. So it's going to be a lot harder to play aggressively for the early game and try to reestablish a streak, especially against assassins who can kind of crit you out, even if you sometimes have a better board. The second thing, probably even more important, the level 2 PA is extremely noteworthy. So Phantom Assassin is essential to the idea of assassins. It's kind of the build around and what you need first if you want to consider going assassins. We were thinking about going assassins ourselves because we have a level 2 bounty. We even have, an assassin pocket, thinking about transitioning into a 6 assassin, just like full assassin build. We can no longer really do that. The reason is he got ahead of us. He has the level 2 PA, which is going to restrict our options in terms of buying it. And assassins is a build with a really low carrying capacity. What that means is it's really hard for too many players, really usually more than one, sometimes two assassins can be fine, but it's really hard for more than one person usually to go assassins in a high level game. The reason is there's only 6 of them. When you see someone going assassins, they're all in when they are, building for assassins in the late game. They're going to be collecting and hoarding all 6, but most importantly, they're going to be rolling aggressively. Assassins get to level 8, and they spend all their gold just rolling for level 3s, which means your odds of finding them in the same game are going to be diminished. Basically, we have to back off this guy's assassins and start looking for something else to build. Okay, next up, we have a really major round for us. So we start off by picking up a Necro. Great early game thing to see. Pockets with Drow and Abaddon. Getting an Undead pocket is good for almost every strategy. Pretty much everything's going to be doing physical, and it's just very efficient. But at this time, we need to decide exactly what we're going to be doing with this build. I don't want to go Assassins. I'm thinking about maybe going Hunters. Also considering the 6 Goblin build. I'm personally not a fan of 6 Goblins. I really think it's something you can do in rare circumstances, but I think it's almost always going to be a mistake. So we're going to be scanning to other boards to kind of inform our decision. Obviously, checking what opponents are playing is going to be very important in auto chess because you're all drafting from the same pool. So you need to try to maybe counter your opponents while maybe trying to not play for very contested strategies. Right. As we look through, we see BSJ is on Hunters Knights. Renz is, of course, on the Assassins. Crane is also on Knights. Michael is on a strange warrior god hybrid, maybe thinking about curving into Hunters. Powder is on just like a value package with a warrior set. This guy is also on Assassins. So that's pretty interesting. We see 2 Assassins, which again is like pretty much beyond the carrying capacity. Like they're going to be blocking each other a little bit for that build. But we also see tons of physical, no mages. Hunters are slightly contested. So we actually are thinking about goblins. This is basically a board that really favors them. Obviously, nobody's really contesting them beyond the Tinker 3 we see, which is really early for that. But nothing to counter goblins because, of course, goblins are kind of countered by mages in that form of burst. So we, at this point in time, basically commit to goblins. We're going to sell the quad for interest since goblin needs the econ very badly. You need to be hitting that level 9 as soon as humanly possible with a goblin build. The Drow 2 almost makes the decision a little bit better because goblins really often like pairing with undead. So just a couple things about this decision. First of all, when you're committed, you're committed. Like when you're in, you can't really back out at that point. At this point, we are in goblins. We have no choice. We're just going to pursue it. We're going to be not really playing for flexibility, not really playing for bench too much. We're going to start selling off some stuff. And if we don't find the techies, we're going to be in a really bad spot, but we're going to be willing to take that risk. The second thing is this idea of kind of scanning around boards. What I would really recommend is basically aim to do this once or twice at least, of course, just for beginners. Between the rounds 10 and 15, these are going to be the rounds, like, you can time it with these creep rounds, the mud golems and the wolves, where just like during these creep rounds, you're looking at everyone's boards. Those are the most important like timings in the game to look at what everyone's doing, because that's around the point where you see what everyone else is running, and that's where you kind of want to be deciding what you're running. I see a lot of people like scanning around earlier than that. Honestly, it doesn't really do that much in terms of like trying to counter builds, because most people won't be really telegraphing what they're going until then. People can kind of like show something and then swap off to another thing. All right, so a couple of rounds later, we managed to scoop up a lone druid, which is always a kind of decent value unit, and second level 2 clockwork, which will really help on the pursuit of looking for level 3. And we can take a moment to look at this positioning. So you'll notice we have the 2 clockworks in the front corners. The corners are important. These are spaces that might be attacked by more than one unit. They're a little bit vulnerable in that way, so you kind of want your tanky heroes on the corners. Then we've got our Shredder and our Lone Druid more centralized. They're level 1s, so they're squishier, but also you want to centralize Timbersaw just because, of course, Whirling Blades. Lone Druid really likes being in the front center unless he melts a little bit too fast, just because in this position he's kind of protected on both sides, so it's really hard for multiple things to be attacking him, which means he can usually get off his ulti before he dies, which is pretty much all he's good for. Necrophos is, of course, just going to be chilling in the middle, healing things. One really important thing about this board, we actually moved our Drow a step back from the Necro. So we see two people are running Assassins right now. The Drow is level 2, a bit tankier, and most importantly, I really don't want my Necro to die before getting off like 1 or 2 healing pulses. So the Drow is effectively protecting him against Assassins, who are, of course, always going to be jumping on your back unit. Also, you'll notice we moved our Bounty Hunter back. We had him back at the start of the game. We moved him forward to kind of be a frontliner. And now he is back to being an assassin. I want something to be able to jump in back, preferably. And I have enough of a frontline that I'm much more comfortable doing this. Okay, so on round 22, that is where we decide to basically pull the ripcord. We have enough gold, enough interest saved, and our health is getting a little bit low. We are dropping off, health down to 54 already, and basically this is where we will pump all the way up to 9, spend however much gold we need to find the techies. I mean, we're willing to spend all the way down to 0 because, of course, we do need the techies for our builds to even work, which is why I don't typically like goblins to begin with. It's very risky to commit for, and you need to commit if you're going goblins. So eventually, we do manage to find the techies after a round and a half of rolling, which stabilizes our board very well. It gives us the 6 goblins. We've got the Warlock package with the Shadow Fiend and the Necro, something you very commonly end up going with goblins, because of course you already have 2 Warlocks if you've got the Undead, which we also have with Necro and a Drow. So very stable board. We're not ready to go to 10 yet. I'm still looking for too many things. I'm still on too many outs to roll to 10. Basically, one of the important things in auto chess is pretty much knowing what to do with your gold at any given time, whether you should use it to roll, whether you should use it to level, or whether you should save it for interest. Those are going to be the main 3 things, and it's kind of a hard call. You have to basically figure out what's going to make you stronger and what you're really looking for when you roll. I think a lot of people roll when they're just looking for maybe one thing, or when they need too many different ways to upgrade their board. What I like to think of is in terms of outs, which are basically single things that will immediately affect the board in an upgrade, right? So in this exact situation, we could use 1 Clockwork to go to a level 3 Clockwork, 1 Shredder to go to a level 2 Shredder, or 1 Tinker to go to a level 2 Tinker. These are our 3 outs, and 3 is a big enough number to pursue rolling. I mean, the Clockwork in particular is a major upgrade, and at this point, I'm playing with a lot of other top players right now. Whenever you see someone going for a level 3 of something, you want to make it as difficult for them as possible. So we're going to roll instead of trying to pump to 10 here. It's a little too early for level 10 to really do enough for us. Okay, so on round 30, we have a pretty good board. We've got a Death Prophet working on a level 2 Tinker, but pretty much the same board, just a little bit better. More importantly, we just got dropped a Ring of Health. This gives us the ability to make a Refresh Orb. Very powerful item, works insanely well with techies, which, hey, I mean, we're already in goblins. This is really good for us. Unfortunately, the Perseverance we have is on our Bounty Hunter. This is going to be really awkward for us because we have no other Bounty Hunter. So at this point, we're looking for a Bounty level 1 so that we can sell our Bounty level 2 so we can get the Perseverance off of it so that we can combine a Refresh Orb on our techies. This gives us another out. So basically the value of rolling just got higher. We're going to need to start rolling very aggressively to be able to use this item. Big set of packs on round 32 though. This is going to get us the second techies as well as the Death Prophet and Clockwork sets. So the number of outs that we have just got really diminished. We're still looking for the Bounty Hunter, level 1, just to be able to get a Refresh Orb. And now we're looking for a techies because, you know, we have the ability to get a Techies level 2, which is a big deal. But hey, 2 Techies level 1s are still pretty good, so it's less of a major upgrade to the board, because until then we're just going to run 2 Techies. So rolling is less valuable. This is where we have to decide whether we want to roll to try to get the refresher on bounty, by getting the bounty, selling and getting the refresher and putting it on Techies, or whether we want to level to 10. Now that we have the second Techies, slots are going to be more important. I'd love to be able to run the 4 undead pocket, which is really what you want with goblins. Ultimately, you want to be able to get level 10 for the 4 undead. I decide at this point to save to level to 10. Bounty Hunter, I'd love it. It's just too much of an unnecessary risk if I don't find it. I have a really, really good setup. There's no reason to take that level of risk. I have a winning board, and if I just go to level 10, I still have the ability to find the refresher orb afterwards. Okay, so we are still at this point looking for the Techies, and we're still looking for that elusive level 1 Bounty Hunter. We're going to be employing at this time a strategy that a lot of top players are using, especially in late game. It pretty much only applies to late game. With 4 and 5 cost units, if you bench them, you increase the odds of finding other 4 and 5 cost units. The reason is because the way packs are generated, or sets in the shop, basically it rolls for rarity before it decides what kind of hero it wants to be. So any hero benched and out of the pack pool, just out of commission of a specific rarity, increases the odds of seeing other heroes of that rarity, basically. I wouldn't bother using this trick for anything under the 4 and 5 cost units, but in late game situations for the 4 and 5 cost units, it actually can make a pretty big difference. So this Death Prophet will increase the odds of us finding the Techies. And just a couple turns later, we get rewarded. We find our Techies, and with it our level 2 Techies. So pretty big deal. We're going to be able to take out the Shadow Fiend, which of course we didn't need. We still have 3 Warlocks without him, and go up to 4 Undead with the Condensed Room on the Techies upgrade. And just to show you guys what the payoff of this build looks like, we can see here just a round later, we are accomplishing 600 DPS with our just Techies alone. That level 2 Techies plus the 4 Undead is just a ridiculous combo when it can be made to work. And then finally, to close out this game, we finally are able to find the Bounty Hunter, so we can sell our level 2 Bounty Hunter. Of course, Refresher is neat. It would not have been worth losing the Goblin buff, which, we can't get back without a new Bounty Hunter. So we put in the level 1 Bounty Hunter, slap the finished Refresher on our Techies 2, and this closes out the game pretty neatly just 1 round later. We can watch this fight, see how it plays out, but we are able to achieve a pretty funny amount of DPS in just this final fight here. So that's Goblins. I mean, it's very feast or famine. Again, I'm going to stress, I don't like going this build. I kind of had to this game. I didn't really have another choice, but it can be extremely punishing when it doesn't work out. So pretty clean finish to the game overall. A little clunky in the mid game, and we made a couple pretty small misplays that actually ended up costing us. Fairly sloppy in the moment. We needed to keep the Bounty Hunter level 1 on the bench. We ended up selling that partly through the mid game, and because we ended up finding the final component to the Refresher Orb and not finding another Bounty Hunter for a while, that almost cost us. That Refresher Orb ended up being pretty important. BSJ had a strong board at the end of the game there. We were losing to it just a couple of rounds before we got our full strategy online. So that, of course, second match. Going into the third match next up, and that one is going to be, trying to be focused just a little bit more advanced. I'm going to try to kind of scale these up bit by bit as I go. So see you guys in that one.